Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching well over 1,000 comedians for nearly 50 years. My guest today is the wonderful comedian, it's Mr. Alex Kitson. Yay! Hello!
Hello. You said you were going to go. Fair play. That was commitment too.
I'm famed for it, my friend.
I know.
Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is.
We're going to have a chat for about the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, all about your comedy career.
Yeah, I mean, let's not making promises about 45 minutes. Let's not.
Well, there we go.
This could be your first. This could be your first TikTok.
Thank you so much for being my guest. I'm really looking forward to chatting to you. And I'd like to kick off by going right back to the start and asking you, how did you become a comedian in the first place, please?
Real careful calculation. I was a huge fan. I was a massive, absolutely obsessed with it. The moment I always liked funny stuff, and then the moment I saw stand up, I was like, oh, I want to do. Like, that's amazing. I want to do that. Like from the age of 13. But I'm from Devon, and also in Devon. I didn't really know how you. So Rick was reading like comedians' autobiographies. I was like, oh, it looks like you go to Cambridge. I guess I have to wait. I have to wait till then, and then was not smart enough to get into Cambridge. So I was like, oh well, plan B. I was sort of googling universities I could get into that had sort of comedians who come from there, or had like I applied to sort of Edinburgh, who rejected me because I knew the festival was there, and I applied to Manchester because I like the comedy. I knew there was a comedy store there. Like, it was honestly like that basic. And then I applied. I mean, God knows why they accepted me, but I applied to Bristol. Embarrassingly now because I know him, but I googled like Bristol comedy and sort of all the Mark Olver's gigs rocked up, and
what a gent. We go to the recordings of The Last Leg, and he does the warm-ups for them.
Yeah, he's always in a sort of odd costume.
What a funny man! He's been on here. He's a great comedian and a lovely bloke. So Devon, whereabouts in Devon?
So I'm from Tiverton, Devon.
Right.
So yeah, right in the middle. So not near any of the sort of nice bits that people go on holiday to. But,
because we went as a family to Torquay in about 1977.
My mum's from Torquay.
The only notable thing about Torquay for me, it was a beautiful place, but I had a very strange diet before I was 10 years old, and when I was on my birthday, we went to this hotel in Torquay, and my mum and dad said, eat everything that's put down in front of you. So I did, and I discovered roasts and everything. And they said, as a treat, we're going to take you to see a comedian at the theatre, and it was Tom O'Connor, no less, from the 70s, a Liverpudlian nightclub comedian who was topping the bill at the theatre in Torquay. And I went at the age of 10, and he came on and he did his patter, and I burst out laughing. I just went, ha! And it floored him. To walk off stage and come back on again.
It's both of our origin stories Devon based. That's where we are.
And that the only notable thing about that is that that's where I got my famous laugh from. So when I see you next time, I will be laughing. Anyway, so you're a stand-up. So you became a stand-up comedian after applying for certain things. You're in Bristol.
Yeah, so I was like, I was sort of very naive about the whole thing, and I was like, oh, you've got to go to university to do comedy, which just isn't true. But I sort of thought it was, and it was also the socially acceptable way to progress in my life, as opposed to I don't know what else I would have done. Sort of gone to I guess I'm going to LA. Like that's but like that was the plan. So I went to somehow got into Bristol Uni, and then nominally I doing a politics degree.
Wow.
I thought that could help me get one of the week.
How very true.
Like the producer's gonna go. It's not funny, but he is qualified. There's nothing we can do. He's got to come on.
Yeah.
And then I sort of spent about a year being too scared to give it a go. I joined there's a comedy society at the uni called Bristol Reunions, who mostly do sketch, but they also do stand up. And I joined them, and then was just so nervous. I spent about a year just sort of hanging around the fringes, and then finally did a gig with them.
So, did you go in by going through the pub circuit, or was it literally through the sketch group?
So it was through the sketch group, and I did my first couple of gigs on like the Bristol student circuit, which isn't big at all.
Yeah.
And then very quickly, if you want to do more gigs, and at that time in Bristol, you had to go onto the pub circuit. So my first two gigs were student gigs, and then my third one was I think it was either Smoke and Mirrors. No, I think it was the White Hart. I think in Bristol, which is it was a pub gig run by David Hoare and Dorian Wainwright. That was my third gig, and then
So, when you progressed to the pub circuit, did you take along friends to be in the audience, or?
No, not really.
Nothing like that. No.
I'm so deeply ashamed of what I said on stage. No, I've not really. I think, I was so lucky I started in Bristol, I know in London, like that's a prerequisite starting comedy is that you have to bring mates to gigs and things like that.
Well, normally I'm the mate, you see, because they know that if they're funny, I'll laugh.
The perfect bringer. I mean, that must be worse. I've never done a bringer, but I imagine that must be the worst case scenario where you grab someone along,
sit there in silence,
and they're just
sorry, did you say comedy?
Yeah, exactly. Poetry night you brought, which is all.
So it literally just took off from getting gigs through the sketch group, and you thought, I can do this well.
So I've been doing sketch, and that was its own sort of separate little thing. And I was already going to, but my plan was always to try and do stand up. So like and then they just put on some stand up gigs, and that I sort of dipped my toe in the water there, and it was basically all my friends. It was like sort of 20 people who were really into comedy, so they were the nicest, easiest gigs ever. I remember doing them, my first couple of months of comedy, being like, I am smashing this gig. I get this here, and then and then you immediately go, and because in the Bristol, you have this weird thing where like you've got the city and you've got the student circuit, you've got the wider Bristol circuit, which is very, again, incredibly lovely, filled with really cool comedy, literate people, and they're all like, if you're a student, they're like you, they're like young and metropolitan, and then if you want, at the moment you want more gigs, and you want to, especially if you want to start getting paid, you'll go out into the West Country, which is completely different. Like it's night and day. It's a different world. I got my sixth ever gig was in Axbridge in Somerset,
right,
a village in Somerset, and it's my first ever. There's pros and cons to it, but it was my first ever paid gig, which is mad to get that early on. But yeah, it was my sixth, and I had like 10 minutes I stitched together, and they just sat there, all in their sort of 70s, I think, and they just sat there like. for the whole 10 minutes, and they had this weird lighting setup where, like, I don't know if this is true or not. This is what they told the organizer of the gig. They told that the lights of the gig changed depending on like the mood and the sound of the audience.
Right.
So, when there's a big laugh, the lights would change to like yellow or like,
wow.
Yeah, and then and for me, I remember it starting blue, and it just went to green.
Wow.
And then it just went to red, and it just stayed there. And I got heckled by I hadn't even mentioned politics or anything. He just shouted Corbynista at me. This is 2018.
So what sort of year was this? When did you first start?
This is 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
And there must have been a point where you thought, I can do this and I can do this well, and I'm quite good at this.
I think the process has been me thinking that all the way through, and then looking back on myself and being like, why did I ever think that?
The reason
Yeah.
the reason I say that is that infamously, which I've told to a load of comedians on the podcast, I am renowned for sitting in an audience at many a comedy gig, many a comedy gig. But I once had a go at stand up because I can remember lines and I can remember
Yeah.
little bits happening to me and all the rest. That's what's all in the blog. And I knew a promoter, and I said, right, I said, I want to have a go at this. And he said, yeah. He said, we've got a gong show for old people. Couldn't be worse.
Oh my God.
And if you've got a script, we'll give you 3 minutes. So my home city is Carlisle. I was in Edinburgh. It was the first year I was in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I went to the Edinburgh Fringe, and my home city's Carlisle, and I just passed my driving test. So I wrote about me crashing cars in Carlisle, and he loved it. And I said, right, go on, and you can do it. So I walked out. There's 3 people in the audience, 3 old fellas. And I walked out and I said, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, the ski jumper, but I can't see the resemblance myself. And when I was at college at Stoke in the 80s, I was his double, and I met him. This is a famous, you're absolute double of him. And one old fella at the back just went, fuck off! And I jumped off. And that was it. I walked off. And the promoter said, have another go. And
You're like,
I don't know whether I
no,
can. I think my calling's in the audience.
and
So
you're
it
much.
must
I suspect you're much happier for that. I think that old man might have done you a favour. I think.
I can't ever imagine you having a bad gig, because I've only seen you the once at Leicester, and you just took the roof off. You were hilarious.
Oh, thanks. That's very kind. But I've never kicked in Leicester, so I think that
Not Leicester. Where did we see you? That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I've been to all these different.
Yeah. No.
festivals this year.
I thought that might be the mistake. I was like, just for a second, I was like, oh my God, is he?
It's gonna say
Alex Keeley or Daniel Kitson or one of the other.
No. You topped the bill at. It was the Brighton pick of the Fringe.
Yeah.
And you literally only did 10 minutes, and I wish I'd gone to see your show, but those 10 minutes were phenomenal.
Oh, thanks. That's so kind.
So,
That's the result of doing badly at a lot of gigs.
Well, it must. I say to a lot of experience, a lot of comedians, it's all about experience. I think any comedian has to have a bad gig to be a better comedian. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, yes and no. That's definitely my perspective, and I think that's true of 99% of people. You occasionally meet someone who's like, who will remain nameless, but who are like, I've never bombed a gig, and they're amazing. You're backstage,
Wow.
you're like, yeah, I bet they're awful, and then they walk out, and they smash it. You're like, I guess there's some people who are just amazing, but like, I totally agree. I think it's like anything. Like the more you do it, the better you are. I would say it depends on the quality of experience. Like, I think you don't become a good comic by doing dreadful old men telling you to fuck off gigs. I think that's, I don't think that promotes good
You
comedy.
weren't there, were you?
Yeah. It sounds great to be fair. I like going to. But like, if you're doing like the experience in the right places, like open mics are obviously fantastic, but they teach you to get good at open mics. It's about getting on the good bills. I find if I'm on with someone really good, like that's when I learn the most. So that's the good experience, as opposed to being the person who doesn't look nervous and talking to a microphone in the room in the back of a pub in front of 2 people.
Yeah,
you won't. That's experience, but it's not like what. Depending on what you want, like that's helpful. I'd argue. Like you've got to do that in order to get comfortable. But after a while, yeah.
So, when you're on stage, what do you like to talk about? Do you have any specific themes or anything like that?
I sort of, I'm very, I just sort of bounce around from different ideas. and it's everything's just sort of an amalgamation of like lots of different ideas of things I've been thinking about, stuff like that. So there's a lot of some stuff about being from. I've got some. I try the Devon thing. I talk about a bit, and I talk about I talk to. I used to have a lot of stuff about my day job, and yeah, there's quite a bit of below the belt stuff which I'm trying to I'm trying to tone down a little bit, because that was a lot of a lot of my stuff. It actually is a lot of my stuff, but yeah, I think it's basically what I've been thinking about, which is not which doesn't always paint me in the best light, but like it's like, oh, here's me experiencing cities, having not grown up in one, and being all the usual sort of in his 20s male comedian knob gags, and then I talk a lot about words as well, which my ex always used to tease me about. I used to do a lot of stuff about like what words mean and things like that. Nerding out, and thinking I'm really clever, but she always just go, you just sound like a weed reading the dictionary.
What I loved about your act is that you were very off field. You never knew what you were going to get next, and I love comedians who do that.
That's what I like as well. Like I love, not like, because when you've watched comedy, so much comedy as you have, like and I don't know whether you have this as a person who's watched loads of comedy, but not obviously the one gig, but like you sort of try and you almost sort of start to finish it in your head.
Oh yeah.
And I like that, and I always try and catch people out, and that's what makes me laugh when I'm watching someone.
Yeah.
When I'm watching the big guys who I was watching when I started out, like people like Adam Hess and Sean McLaughlin.
Yeah.
I just never knew like where it was going to get. Like, and it would just sort of jag at the weirdest times. I just loved it.
It's very much. Excuse me. It's you're very much. You're not like Sean McLaughlin, if I can say his name. You're. But there are very distinct parallels with you, which I love, because he's a great comedian too. He's been on here and he was saying how he constructed a routine and all the rest. So I was going to ask you, can you tell me about your writing process, if you've got one, for a routine or a show?
So my writing process is basically, I mean, I think I share it with quite a lot of comedians, but it's very. If I have a funny idea, I try and get really good at, if the moment I have a funny idea, something in my head that makes me laugh, or I say something or I hear something and I go, oh, try and stick it in my phone and just try and write it down as much as I remember it. And then when it gets to like a new material gig, I used to run an open mic in Bristol every Sunday night.
Right.
And basically, as the other acts were on, I'd be at the back scribbling out my phone notes and then go up with them and see what stuck and what didn't. And that's basically the process for like trying to work out new bits. And what I end up with is lots of little bits that don't work that well. And they get like a huh. And then after a while, I'll do something like a preview or a longer, I'm starting to put together my first Edinburgh show.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of other shows at other festivals, and I'll get to that and I'll stitch together every idea I've ever had, and then you go like, oh wait a second, here's a bit about Devon, here's a bit about words, here's a bit about whatever, and then you go like, oh wait a second, this feels like a routine, and then maybe I can try and find an angle on this, and then if you mash enough ideas together, it looks like you come up with a routine. I like to think it looks like you come up with a routine on the spot. When you go like, oh, wait a second, I've been thinking about chocolate mousse for the last 6 months. Here's all my thoughts on chocolate mousse that I had in some months apart.
Yeah. So they say the comedians, they do to build up the show, they do 5 minutes and then 10 minutes and 20 minutes and half an hour and then 45 minutes, and it just builds up the routine. Is that how you go about it? Do you have to do a certain amount of time, or can you just go in and say, right, I've got half an hour?
depends on the act. I mean,
Yeah,
some people
yeah.
do it. Some people you'll and you can go and watch them in Edinburgh. People who go like, I've got an hour, and you go and
Yeah,
watch it. But by and large, they don't. But like that's the traditional route. It's like, yeah, you start doing fives, then you
yeah,
go to 10, and then you go to maybe like a 15 on the way, but you go to 20, and then you start doing your just putting together your shows, and you're sort of stitching together your bits. I think with writing an hour, again, depending on how you want to approach it, but like it depends on your approach. You could do what 12 5-minute sets stitched together. Like that would be some people do a sort of approximation of that. It's a personal taste. I quite like Edinburgh shows with something behind it and some kind of theme or motif or story or
yeah.
so I'm at the moment trying to sort of work my
Yeah.
trying to meld the two together, the story I want to tell with like the material I have, and then like killing your darlings and being like, well, maybe that's not in the show,
Yeah.
I can save that for later, and trying to write new stuff. Does that fit in, or not, or does the or is it for another time?
Fascinating that. What do you think makes a good comedian? I don't know whether that's a very good question, but
I mean, it's like, I think it is a good question, because like the obvious one is obviously, oh, they're funny, but like there's so many people who are funny. Like there's just a billion, and like what makes me like or you really like someone, as opposed to like it's like football. Like there's loads of people who are good at football.
yeah,
What makes them like amazing at football? I think good comedians are ones that ones that can surprise you.
yeah,
That's definitely part of it, because that's what so much of joke telling is. But also, I think what I always try and do when I'm trying to write a joke, this sounds incredibly pretentious, but like, I try and surprise people with the truth. Like I think that and that sounds really wanky, but like if you've got like if you're being honest, if you're being even if you're lying, you're also like if you can surprise people with something that's true, like that's that's what, for me, when I'm watching someone, that's what really gets me, like a sort of like the bark, like when like they've said something that's surprised me, and I've never heard anyone say anything like that before, but it's true. And I think that's what and like that combination, I think, sort of does define most of my favorite acts. I think it's
there is something about walking onto a stage and being very endearing or very original that makes the audience member not forget the act. And I think that's why audiences keep going back. And you've got that in spades. I mean, I said to you about that headline in 10 minutes. That was unforgettable because of the way that you were running around, the way that you were there with one point to make that group of people cry with laughter.
Oh, that's fair enough. That's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like I like doing well at gigs. I quite like that. It's because it's so much fun. That's what.
Have you got any stories that are high points or low points in your career?
I think the low points are flooding in.
I can't believe that.
I was so awful. It took me quite a long time to sort of work out what I was doing. But like low points, I remember the lowest point where I threw out all my stuff because I was like, I'm not good enough.
Wow.
Was I went and did Barnstable Comedy Club,
right,
up in North Devon, and it was like quite a big. It was like my first like pro-ish spot. Like I was being paid probably more than I've ever been paid, but not masses. But like I was like, this is a big deal. Like 10 minutes, like 300 people in this club in North Devon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever watched Luke Honorati?
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
I mean, brilliant. Like so fun. And in Devon, he's the king. Like he's absolutely his club, and he emceed and was crushing, like absolutely destroying. And then the opening act went on, and did fine, like survived basically, because they were the Saturday night North Devon, like they kind of crowd who could like really like you or hate you. They could go, and then I was on my own in the middle doing 10. I went on, and it was just pin drop silence, like absolute. Not didn't hear anyone for like 10 minutes. Absolutely nothing at all.
Wow.
And I was just, all those things that comedians talk about, like the sweats, I started like all that sort of thing, and then walked up absolutely, and I went back. In fact, so this is probably my arrogance and stuff. But I was like, Luke's too good of an MC. They just want to see Luke. I was like, that's unplayable. Like, Luke's done too good of a job at MC. Like, that was my fault, which is so not true. And then Paul McCaffrey was headlining.
Oh, he's superb.
I mean, and he was doing an Edinburgh preview, and I'd never run into Paul before, and it was pre-Apollo, pre the podcast.
He just got it, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like doing Edinburgh preview, and I was like, "Good luck, buddy." They didn't like my polished 10. Like, goodness, they're gonna like. And I've never seen anyone rip a gig harder. Absolutely destroyed.
He's superb.
They were like bending over at his Edinburgh preview, and that drive back from Barnstable was a pretty like, oh, I've got to change. I've got to throw out all my jokes. I've got to change this completely. Just mostly the drives, like getting kicked out of competitions, and like I had a 4-hour drive back from Blackpool. Well, I just from a competition, I got to the semi-finals. Somehow I scraped my way into the semi-finals.
Well done.
But this is, I mean, lack of other. I don't know how it happened. I think I'd gone on the right point in the night. Yeah, I was third place in the Southampton heat of this competition.
Yeah,
and I went up, and the semi-finals were in Blackpool, in the Winter Gardens in Blackpool.
Yeah.
And for Jason Manford, and like it was a bunch of people. I was mostly doing student gigs, and this was like gigs in Bristol, and they were just wanted to see Jason Manford. And I remember Josh Jones. The first time I ran into Josh Jones.
Oh yes, yeah.
All I'm seeing, so funny, and then almost every act died horribly, apart from a couple. But 9 out of the 12 went through.
Right.
Even though almost everyone bar one guy had completely bombed. Like 9 of us were still going through, and I didn't get through, having bombed the hardest. I had to drive the other act. I had to drive 2 other acts back via Birmingham and stuff like that, and they got through. I was like,
you mentioned Paul McCaffrey. He's been on here.
Oh yeah,
and infamously, it was so funny. We did the interview. This is not going to happen here because I've checked it all. Yeah. But we did the interview, and I played it back to myself, and you could only hear me. You couldn't hear him. And the bloke, the guy who sorts out my audio for me, I told him, I went, oh, I'm absolutely gutted because he's one of my favourite comedians, and what am I going to do? He said, well, you have to tell him. So I told him, and he said, Rich, he said, I can't do it for another month, but I'll very happily do it again. Oh. He came on, and the first thing he said was, I'm so pleased to be here, Richard, but this is the last fucking time. And that's the magic of the man. He's so good. I've been a fan for years. We've seen him do his hour-long shows at Edinburgh and everything. He's so good at what he does. You mentioned before about your first gigs. How do you cope with any nerves? Do you get nerves at all? Do you still get nerves now?
Yeah.
How do you cope with them?
I used to get so nervous, I just didn't deal with them, and I was dreadful, and just so visibly nervous. And then after a while, which in terms of like, I get nervous now, but I went for a stage of not getting nervous, and it's I was like, great, I don't get nervous anymore. That's great. And it's because I wasn't trying anything new. I was never trying. I was just doing the same jokes, so I knew how they were going to go, and like either they go well or they wouldn't. And then Morgan Rees, he's he started a couple of years before me in Bristol area, and he was like, you got to start doing different jokes. He used to run a gig, and he was like, I'll have you on it, but you got to do other stuff. You got to. I've done it once before. I asked him to do it again. He's like, you just got to write new stuff, mate. And then I immediately did and started getting nervous again. I think, and now if I'm not nervous, I'm like, it means I'm not trying anything new. It means I'm not throwing something in that that scares me. Like I want to try out. Like that's what gets me nervous. And in terms of dealing with the nerves, I try and do a couple of things which are really again, really wanky. But I try and watch The Last Comedian, and I try and laugh along with their set, which because I want to be in the audience's frame of mind, which I think, and then it relaxes you as well. Like if you're there, like you rather than just going, oh my god, you just go on in a completely wrong mindset. And also I just sort of talk to myself, and if I'm really nervous, I have to sort of remind myself. I have to, and it's not true, and it feels very embarrassing to say, but I always sort of say, like, no, you're meant to be here. You're supposed to be here. Yeah, especially when it's because I only really get properly nervous now when there's someone I want to impress.
Right.
Like that's when I get really nervous. So like, if there's something like if there's someone in the industry or a big comedian's on the bill, or someone who writes reviews for a website,
Here I am.
Something I do in day-to-day conversation. I tend to freeze up whenever I'm like want to impress someone. And
that's fascinating because on stage you don't come across like that at all. You're extremely confident.
Oh, that's good to know. I think I have watched back videos and I've gone, especially recently. Back in the day, I used to be able to tell, but like my memory of my memory of the gig is just like I was so nervous, and then I walk on stage and I just don't look it, like which is really lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's taken a while.
Would you say that as soon as you walk on stage and pick up a microphone or get your first laugh, the nerves go?
Depends on the gig. It's usually first laugh.
Yeah.
You can tell. Like once you've got them, and they're like, right, this guy's funny.
Yeah.
Like it's just trust. Like
yeah.
How much of walking on stage is convincing the audience that you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because they're worried it's going to be shit. And once you've done that, and that can be your first joke, but that can be like a couple of minutes in.
Yeah.
I had that on Sunday. I did that at the Creek. I did my first line, it went okay, and then I did my second one and it did well, but I was like, okay, I'm 50-50 here. Like some people are on board, some people aren't. And then I had to do the next routine. It's quite a long routine. So then I was getting to the end. I was like, well, this has to hit, otherwise it's gonna. And then it did, and then I relaxed into it. But that's not.
You were all right. Yeah. How do you remember all your routines? Do you have a way of doing it?
Badly.
You write things down. You have a lot of notes.
I've got a system, but it's not. It's what works for. I just really need to find my notebook.
Yeah.
Because I've got. I keep a notebook. This is my one from last year, I think. But I have to write down every set list I ever do.
Wow.
It's kind of like that makes me less nervous as well, actually.
Yeah.
Write down every set list. Then sometimes I forget my notebook and I've got to have a piece of paper in. And remembering, I don't tend to. Oh, I do forget routines. It's about recording everything, really.
Yeah.
If you can record every set, like in terms of what you did, you can look back and go, oh, here's what that's why I like having the notebook, because I can literally, if I go back to a club, I go, oh, what did I do last time?
Yeah.
And then you pick up routines that you forgot about. Like if something falls out your 20 or your 10 or whatever, you can go back and be like, oh, that joke. Oh, what's that? Where'd that go? Why's that gone? And do that. And then I try and record them all on my phone.
Yeah.
So like audio recording in my pocket. They're dreadful quality recordings. But like, especially if a bit stops working, I tend to go back. Like it did work and then it didn't. I can go back and go like, well, it was working in February. Why is it now?
Why is it not now? Yeah.
And every single time it's because I've started, I stutter, or I've added too many words, or tried to it, and whatever, like shouted a slur, whatever I did, whatever way you can f up a bit, I started doing that on the regular. I haven't noticed. One of the
most creative things I've ever done, apart from this blog and podcast. I wrote a play which was originally for the Edinburgh Fringe.
Oh wow!
It's called The Applicant. It's basically about me coming down from London, coming down from Carlisle. I've got a successful girlfriend in London with a very high-profile job, and I've never had an interview in my life. And it's a series of interviews with me and a number of interviewers. If there's a plot to it, it gets progressively better, and I get better at doing it. But of course, there's a big twist in it. When I wrote this and we rehearsed this for like 10 weeks, and my mate was very good at impressions, so he did he played all the interviewers, and it was just me with all the monologues. So I would like run in. It would be my first interview. I'd look round, the audience would be there, and I would be nervy and start chatting to them, and that was the monologue and build up the story.
Yeah.
So we rehearsed. I ran out the first night we did it, and I forgot the lines.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say that would be. I wouldn't remember one line throughout the whole month. I was notorious.
I just need to go home.
I was notorious for it when I was doing sketch comedy. I just couldn't learn the lines. I've got really bad, short-term memory, and it's.
Oh, it was just.
And the only way if I have to learn something specifically, so I don't learn any of my acts word by word.
What was interesting about it was as soon as my mate come on, we could bounce off each other, and there was somebody else on stage. It's a bit like your notebook. It's a bit like having a prop. Something to hold on to that you can think, well, yes, I've done this, I've got this. Would you say that I've just told you the story about being an actor in a play? Would you say there are similarities between acting and comedy? Because surely with comedy, I would guess, if you do stray, you've got the audience to play with and things like that.
So in terms of the similarities between acting and stand-up, or
stand-up,
okay, so I wasn't really, I did sketch comedy as an aside thing, but it does seem to be that stand-ups are lots of them end up being really good actors in ways that which doesn't really. I think it translates more that stand-ups are often good actors rather than actors good stand-ups, I think. And I think the stand-up's amazing because it's the most direct way of getting audience feedback. It's so instantaneous. Whereas if you're a comic actor, presumably you do a play, and obviously people are supposed to be laughing, but if they don't laugh, that's okay because it's actually a play. And you don't get that instantaneous and if you're an actor, it could be the script, it could be the lighting, could be the thing. Whereas stand-up, it's by and large just you.
Yeah.
If you're doing a play, and then they immediately brought on a second play when you've just been on, and they all started losing at that play, you'd be like, oh, maybe our play's not very good. I think, stand-up really teaches you those instincts. And,
Let's move on to Edinburgh itself. I am very lucky to be able to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. It's my holiday. I go for a week, usually the middle week, and I've been going for the last 15 years. I've only missed 2 of them. So my first one was 2005. This year, I've just got a new job in the council, so I'm going at the end of the run, so I'm going in the last week. Can you tell me about your first ever Edinburgh experience? Did you go up as a punter? Were you in a show? Were you in a split bill? Anything like this?
So I went as a punter, basically because I was so obsessed with comedy. I went as a punter when I was I 16 or just turned?
Wow.
And my dad really kindly took me.
Wow.
Yeah, really out of the blue. Was like, do you want to go to Edinburgh? And he went to uni there, so I think he wanted to sort of go back and stop around and stuff like that. So we went for a weekend when I was 16. And saw some stuff, and I loved it. I sort of spent the whole time so excited. Basically, I felt almost ill all weekend. I was so excited. And yeah, like so I went there very briefly then, and and we had no idea how the festival worked. We sort of rocked up, and I was like, oh well, I'd quite like to see. We rocked up maybe like the middle weekend, and I was like, well, maybe I'd quite like to see James Acaster. And I went to the thing, like, oh, he sold out 4 months ago,
Yeah.
and we got fly and went to lots of random stuff, and so I did that, and then I didn't go again until I was 20. Was I 21? Yeah, because that was when I got into the sketch show.
Right.
I didn't get in my first year, into the sketch show, and then finally got cast in the next year, and went up in 2018. And had just the best time ever doing sketches. Did that again in 2019, and then last year 2022 was the first time going with like a stand-up show. I'd done compilation shows and done stand-up on mixed bills and stuff like that in 2018, 2019, but last year was the first time
there is something incredible about stepping off a train at Waverley and the atmosphere just hits you.
Yeah.
And you just think, this is incredible. And I have friends all over Britain who join me in the time that I'm there, different times of the time that I go. And it's just the most incredible experience. I have to do a well-designed spreadsheet for everything that we're going to go.
I knew you were going to go. I knew that's it. Yeah. I mean, it's the way to do it. It's the way to do it, because then you see what you want to see.
You can't see everything. It's impossible.
It's impossible. But if you want to make a good go of it, you.
Are you going up in 2023? Then is this your first show?
So I'm doing 45 minutes. So
right.
It is my first show by myself, but it's not my big. They call it your big debut show and and all of that. So I'm doing free entry, pay what you can, a 45-minute show.
Where are you on at?
I'm on at the Mash House.
Oh, right, I know it well. Just the comic at the Mash House.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right, and what time?
7:30. So
Well, you never know. You may see me.
Yes. I mean, the problem is you're going to. If you're organised and you got a spreadsheet, that's when you're seeing Al Murray and Phil Wang and and David O'Doherty. I think I clashed with David O'Doherty, but so I'm relying on people's.
The wonderful thing, though, just like the blog, is I like to see up and coming acts as well as established acts. So the blog is for everybody. I support this wonderful creative media because what's not to love than to laugh? It's
incredible.
I wish you all the best. I really
do. And so I really like your work, because I met you and I went on the website. Oh my god, this is incredible! This is like
it started off with another spreadsheet. I listed every single act I ever saw.
Yeah,
and it was getting to something like 800, and it's now 1200, and it's just bonkers. But it's so many memories and so many. I've branched out this year, doing more festivals. I went to Leicester. I've just come back from Hastings. That was fantastic. Hastings Comedy Festival is a really good one.
I'll do that next year.
So is Leicester. They've just had the 30th birthday. Been to Brighton, I saw you there. I've got Buxton coming up. Going to go to Hull, Edinburgh, of course. Wow. Just loads of them. And I love going there for the atmosphere of them all and to meet everybody. So even if I don't see your show, I hope to see you there, and I'll buy you a well-deserved drink. Very
great. Yeah, looking forward to it. And I mean, this year, work in progress. Absolute diabolical.
It'll be great. It'll be really good. So all the very best with it. Today, what has been your comedy highlight? Have you had one?
Gigging with Russell Howard. I did Russell Howard.
Oh, wow.
I hesitate to call it support, but it
was.
I did 5 minutes. This is Olver again. I actually Oliver didn't book me, but I was Russell was doing some warm up shows for I think his current tour.
Yeah.
So about a year and a half ago in Bristol at the Wardrobe, and I went to go pick up another act to take him to a second gig.
Wow.
And I ran in, met Russell, and he said, "Oh, do you want to come do 5 minutes tomorrow?" And
Wow.
absolutely. Russell Howard's part of the reason I ended up in Bristol. And he was the comic that
he's so natural, isn't he? Yeah.
Oh, he's fantastic. He's so good. And like,
I first saw him do 10 minutes for BBC Comedy Presents at Edinburgh before he was famous. And then we got tickets the next year for his first hour-long show. And I'd just got a new mobile phone, and I thought I'd switched it off, but as he bounced on, the damn thing went off, and I couldn't switch it off, and I became part of his show.
Yeah, that proper mid 2000s.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he's brilliant. He's
fantastic, and getting to do that, and I know his crowd are the loveliest, in Bristol. Like they're all so happy to see them, and he brought us on all really nice. Oliver was comparing. He brought us on really nicely.
That sounds brilliant.
And you go and do all your Bristol jokes in front of a crowd. You're up to it, and so that's one of my mates. So Russell Howard was the biggest comic when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Who obviously McIntyre and Lee Evans and Peter Kay and all that. Yeah. But Russell Howard was the one that felt like our one.
That's brilliant. It's so good.
That felt like, oh, this is a real highlight.
Yeah. How have you found online gigs as opposed to live gigs? Have you done any of them?
I did a few. I didn't. They could be all right.
Yeah,
they could be. And some of them were set really lovely. I did Chops in Bristol, and I know your Haunt Always Be Comedy did some great ones, and and all that. And I did a sort of work in progress preview online, which was sort of helpful in Stop the Gap. But I also did a couple which were
they were a very, very good substitute. I mean, it was such a good idea to have them. But when they first started, you're right. I would go to Always Be Comedy a lot because they were very good at doing it. But I would also go to Sean James' Monday night one.
Oh yeah.
Go to Jarlath Regan's Irish one on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Boothby Graffoe did one. When they were good, they were very good. But when they started off, there was no audio.
Yeah.
So I would sit here laughing at four walls, and people were banging on the walls. I thought I'd be taken away. But when the comedians, when the audio happened, the comedians could time the jokes, and they were getting.
Oh yeah, and that's what was so crucial about it. Yeah. I did in that era, just when it was opening up, I did a drive-in gig, but it was the second week they'd done it, and but they had a noise complaint the week before, so they weren't allowed to honk the horns or do any of that.
Oh,
I was just on stage, dying on my ass in front of 120 cars.
I mean, thank God live comedy came back.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There is something about going on a to a comedy night, sitting down, and you're in the moment, and you just say, right, make me laugh, and anything can happen, and you're great in that situation because you let anything happen.
Exactly, and that's what that's what the art form is. It's not. It would never have been invented if Zoom was always.
Exactly. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present? Did you have comedy growing up?
Yeah, so not early. I was sort of aware of sort of funny people on TV, and I sort of knew about Stephen Fry. And I think remember Russell Brand's book being available in Tesco and being I guess he's a funny person. But McIntyre was the first one. I was part of that generation who sort of
he's so good.
He's incredible. I know a lot of people. I think it's coming a bit full circle with McIntyre. I think people a little bit sniffy with him for a while, but he's one of the greatest.
He is. I first saw him again at Edinburgh in a little tiny hut, well before he was famous. And he played about 50 people. and you could tell then how good he was.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest coups I've had on the podcast, I was the last person to interview Barry Cryer, and McIntyre's dad with Barry Cryer wrote the Kenny Everett show.
Yes. Yeah.
Cryer was a massive fan of McIntyre's, and you could see how he was trying to find new material, trying to find new comedians all the time, Cryer, and he was very good at picking them out. And McIntyre is a perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good, and he was, definitely, like, he's probably one of the last few, right, who are like big, like goal.
Yeah.
And then who else? Like, so just over the years, I got really into Bo Burnham, and I got really into Pete Holmes, like American guys, and then I obviously namesake, but Daniel Kitson, incredible, like
he's amazing.
Just I mean the greatest, and I've got the same surname as you.
You're not related, are you?
No, not related. Yeah, sadly. And then John Mulaney.
Oh, superb! Yeah.
So relatively early on the Mulaney, and then when I started actually doing comedy, like I said before, Adam Hess, Sean, McLaughlin, Helen Bauer, I love.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
And just like that, and that's
so many, isn't there?
There's a bit like that's sort of my And then like I love so many American, like sort of Dave Attell and because I grew up with YouTube, so you can watch these things. And
that's fantastic. My first ever gig was Les Dawson. Which I mean, it was on holiday again, and a year later we saw Tommy Cooper, and it was just that the curtains opened. He's lying on a bed, and one woman in the crowd is pissing herself, and it trickles round. He doesn't do a thing, and everybody's crying with laughter. And perfect timing. He pops his head up and he goes, "What? Somebody come on!" He's just brilliant. I mean, I've got the bug here, all right.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy. You watch old Tommy Cooper stuff, and like, this is so brilliant.
Yeah. The ones I would love to have seen, and the reason why the blog, of course, Morecambe and Wise. But I would have loved to have seen them. I'm hoping to get Gary Morecambe on here, his son, just to say thank you so much because of the laugh. But I remember, there's so many highlights. One of them was the first bill of the Comedy Store. I first went in 1988 when my brother came down. And on the bill was John Maloney. He was comparing. Richard Morton, who's still gigging. Phil Jupitus, who's still gigging. Linda Smith, God bless her.
Oh, yeah.
She was fantastic. And top of the bill was an American visual comic called Charles Fleischer, who was never heard of again because he went to Hollywood to voice Roger Rabbit. It was amazing. Things like that. But I've seen so many. I saw Bill Hicks was a highlight who started in Manchester. Frank Skinner when he first started. Peter Kay I saw in a club of about 10 people in it. And he was on a bill of 5 acts. And he was 4th on, and I couldn't stop laughing. And I said to my mate, this guy's going to be a superstar. And I laughed all the way through the 5th act. I was still laughing at the 4th act. But a month later, I had to go up to the comedian and apologise because I'd missed his act.
I mean,
anyway, there's so many of them. So many. I love Widdicombe at the moment. Josh Widdicombe, trying to get him here. He's
brilliant. So good. Yeah.
And he's Devon as well, of course.
He is. Yeah, he's the other side. He's
Yeah. Like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience, or did you before you were a comedian?
Not really. I didn't have like a big like comedy fan time of going to watch live gigs because when my time as a comedy fan was like in Devon and there wasn't much on. So and I was too young a lot of the time. So like
you're not a nerd like me.
But I was worse because I wasn't even going out and meeting people. I was on TV, like on YouTube and stuff like that. So like and then yeah, I was going to, and then I never really. I'd watched a couple of things. I'd been to Edinburgh and I'd been to watch Danny Boy.
Oh, he's superb.
Yeah,
Yeah, superb.
in
He's a
Wellington.
master of the craft. He really is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so good.
yeah.
And I'd seen bits and bobs. Dom Holland and Hal
Okay.
Crumpton. I'd come and done a gig at my school once. Um, and Bennett Aaron as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and uh, and so I'd seen bits and bobs, and then I started doing the sketch stuff and saw a lot of sort of studenty. I
Right.
started watching more stuff then, and then pretty much started, and then I'd go and watch everything in Bristol. Basically, that was my. So I'd be gigging, but like if I wasn't gigging, I like the rule I made for myself was that I needed to do, because I was like, I'm taking this seriously. I've got to do something comedy related every day. So so that can be like do a gig, go watch a gig, like do some writing, have like sit down books and gigs, some kind of like thing. So like quite often, yeah, when I was in uni, I'd be doing 2 open mics a week, and then I'd go down to Oppo in
Yeah,
Bristol,
yeah.
or any of the other gigs, and I'd
It's
watch.
it's
Yeah.
such a good ground in Bristol. I'd never been until this year. I've always wanted to go, and I had a superb weekend at the Slapstick Festival.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I absolutely loved it, and I'm going to make a point of going there every year now. It's such
Yeah.
a lovely place, and it seems very savvy and knowing of certainly of comedy and things like
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
it's that lovely combination of you get that metropolitan savviness that you
yeah,
get in like London, but you've also got that really lovely West Country
yeah.
generosity. Like, so it's just mixes, I think, just to create like
That's
just the
brilliant.
loveliest audiences in the world.
Yeah, yeah,
They're like, we get it, we know what you're doing. God bless you, we bloody love it, mate. And that's
yeah.
yeah, like, and so I think it's the best place to.
It's great.
If not the one of the best top 2 or 3 places to start doing comedy in the UK at the moment, I think.
Brilliant. Well, listen, my friend, this has been an absolute joy. You've been a wonderful guest. You
Oh,
really have. Thank you so much for your time.
oh, totally.
And before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say? Have you got any podcasts? Where can people find you on social media, that sort of thing?
I'm on social media. I'm at Alex Kitson 0. I don't put masses on there because I actively self-sabotaging my career. But and also I've got a day job which I can't put
Sure, yeah.
my stand-up out there at the moment. So like, but like my gigs and stuff and anything important when it does happen, will be on there. Yeah,
Yeah.
Alex Kitson 0 on Twitter and Instagram especially. And I've got like a newsletter of like short stories and stuff I write. That's on there. Yeah, apart from that, nothing to plug. I'll plug your website. Yeah.
Well, as I say, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward very, very much to seeing you again soon because you're a brilliant comic talent. You
Oh,
really
well, thank you very
are.
much. That's
And
far too kind.
and I know maybe this recording will probably go out after the Edinburgh Fringe, but I wish you all the best with the run.
Oh, cheers.
I
Thank
really
you.
do, and I hope to see you up there.
Yeah, cheers. Hopefully,
All the very best, Ian. Take care. Thanks so much.
see you later, man.